Hello, my name is Odarlyn Rosario, and today I'm going to be talking about inequality in the 1950s to the 1980s. In the 1950s, America was different. The new generation of baby boomers was about to take over. More and more students began graduating in the 1950s. Also, 50% of them went to college. However, it was not easy. For Mexican Americans and African Americans, they had to fight for their education. In 1950s, African Americans were segregated by law in 17 states. And for Mexican Americans, 87% of them were in school. However, the curriculum did not benefit them. They were only benefiting the white children at the time. Attending school for them and receiving an education was a challenge. They had to fight for what they believe in, and they had to go to a place where they felt unwelcome. They felt like they didn't belong in this school. Teachers, administrators were calling them idiots. They were calling them stupid, and because of their race, they told them that they would never amount to anything. The biggest issue was that they couldn't even speak Spanish. That was the only way they could communicate with others. If they were caught speaking Spanish, they would get punished. Brown versus the Board of Education and the Little Rock Nine shaped the history of education and inequality. They fought for what they believed in. They wanted everybody to be treated equal. Because of them is why we're here today, receiving an education and receiving the resources and support that we need to achieve our goals. The Brown versus the Board of Education and the Little Rock Nine shaped the history of segregation and inequality. These events helped fight the inequality that was taking place in the 18th and 19th century. Racial segregation in public school became unconstitutional. There was segregated school for African American children. However, they were not equal. Unless you were white, you were not receiving the same level of education and resources as the white children were receiving. They became separate and equal. But we all know that colored children were not receiving the same resources. The Little Rock Nine was a group of 9 African American teenagers randomly selected to enroll in an all-white school in order to comply with the Supreme Court Brown versus the Board of Education. These 9 children were denied entry to their own school due to the color of their skins. Regardless of the physical and verbal abuse and feeling unwelcome in a place where all they wanted was an education, the Little Rock Nine kept their head up high and fought for the right to become equal. In today's society, we still see segregation. It is a slow and developing process that has been ongoing since the 18th century. In the book School, The Story of American Public Education, on page 143, it states, historian James Anderson says, their sense was, we are going into an environment where we're not wanted. The teachers are going to be hostile. The students think of us as despised race. We cannot make friends. We will be isolated and discriminated against. And the question for African Americans is, do you want your children to pioneer this process? Do you want your children to pay this price? Gary Orfield states, but when we're talking about schools where children were socialized, people were much more resistant. A decade after Brown, 98% of black kids were still in all-black schools. Almost no white kids in the South were in black schools. There was almost no segregation of faculty and so forth. So, the courts really failed to enforce the Brown decisions, and the Supreme Court didn't tighten it enough so that it really made a whole lot of difference. One of the students from Crystal City High School named Jose Angel Gutierrez actually gained a master's degree. After receiving the master's degree, he went back to that high school and helped those students get the benefits they deserve. He helped the students write down demands that they wanted, and they took that to the board. However, the administrators there, they did not listen to their demands, and because of that, the next day, hundreds of students did not show up to school. After the students striked, they began to get some of the demands they wanted. With that being said, some of them returned to school the next day. I can relate to some of these issues because when I came from my country to America, I couldn't speak English. It was very hard for me to fit in and try to get an education and be at the same level that everybody else was. But the difference was that my teachers took the time and had patience with me to teach me the language. Because of them is why I strive today, and because of them is why I'm also teaching other students. I want to help students get the resources and support that they need. Like most of the Mexican American students, their parents didn't have the money, the education, or the resources to help their children gain the education they wanted. That's why I want to be a teacher to help those students in need, to help them gain the education and help them achieve their goals so that they have a brighter future. The move for education did not come easy. It took court cases and students going on strike, students fighting for what they believed in, to change the way society looked at education for African Americans and Mexican American children. Now we all have the resources and support to achieve our goal, which is amazing. We also have the issue of women's inequality. In the 1970s, women were not expected to go to school. They were expected to stay home and do the woman's job. Gender inequality and discrimination in the 1970s was another issue. Women were denied education and expected to stay home and do the woman's job. TIAC states that some schools and districts spend up to 150 times more for the boys' sport than for girls. After reading this book, I do appreciate education even more. I've learned the struggles and the challenges that African Americans and Mexican Americans faced in order to gain education, in order to fight for what they deserved and gain the education they wanted. We should all take our time and read this book at least once in our lifetime. Because of this book, I now appreciate education even more. It's important that we do not take our resources and support for granted, because in the 1950s and the 1980s, there was nothing for students that wanted to gain an education. Now that we have many opportunities and many resources, technology also, we could take all these resources and use them to develop the generation of tomorrow. I hope you guys enjoyed this little video, and I hope it was very informative. If you have any other questions, please comment down below and I'll be sure to answer them. Thank you so much, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!